This week, we're going to look at a variety of ways to make ceilings in your home much more interesting. This is good stuff, whether you're building a new home or just improving the one you have. So you'll want to stick around because things are really looking up, literally. What makes the interior of a home really distinctive? What makes it kind of stand out from the crowd? Well, a lot of times it's the interior decorators' talents that really put all the elements together to really make it look like it's popping right out of the pages of a magazine. But more than anything, the design elements that are put together, such as specialty ceilings, can have such an impact on the overall look of a home. The feel, the tone, every aspect of it, and this ceiling certainly makes a big statement. First of all, there's the height of this thing. It's a cathedral-style ceiling that comes off the walls at about 10 feet and continues up to the ridge at about 15 feet. To give it a more rustic feel, the builder installed a rough-sawn cedar beam along the ridge with exposed rafters from the same material leading up to it. The bulk of the ceiling surface is a tongue-and-groove pine that appears to be the underside of the roof, though it's actually installed over drywall to maximize the home's energy efficiency. The same treatment is being used on the end walls where the crew is putting up the last of the tongue-and-groove material. Now the slots left uncovered in the middle will later house track lighting to provide lots of controllable light in the room. It's amazing what the application of wood trim over even a flat ceiling can do to give a room depth, and this coffered ceiling is a great example of that. Here, the wood is painted in a color that contrasts the drywall so that it gives the room a little more of a formal feel. Mimicking the shape of adjacent architectural details is another cool trick that was used in this wood barrel ceiling, which mimics the arches used in the cased openings on either side of it. Now, if you want to make a real impact, it's hard to top something like this custom circular drop ceiling. And when the time comes to sell your home, that may be just the effect you're looking for.
When I'm showing a home to a buyer, it's fun to go into a home that has different architectural interests. Whether the home has granite countertops or they've remodeled their kitchen with stainless steel appliances, the bathroom's been redone, it just makes it more appealing to the buyer to see new and different things that you might find in one home that you don't find in another. If a buyer is looking at a home and have their priority list and they are getting it down to 1 or 2 homes, they're going to look at the special features in that home, and specialty ceilings is one of those features that they would be looking at and comparing. They would be more interested in a home that would have something unique for them, so when they purchase this home, they feel like they do have a treasure, a one of a kind.
The ceilings we just looked at were designed for nothing more than beauty, to enhance the interior of a room. And as Mary Ann just explained, that does have its advantage. But the interior design doesn't always dictate the design of the ceiling. Sometimes it's the exterior. This is a great example. Now you can see this is a really dark room I'm in, but this is going to be a media room. That's why you've got the black walls, black ceiling. It's going to look really good. On the outside though, you can see this is a beautiful high-pitched gable. Inside, you'll see the walls coming up, and then the ceiling follows the same line of the roof outside. However, at the top, the ceiling flattens out. Now yes, this gives it a great unique design in here, but there's also a purpose for this. You see, this is actually a bonus area over a garage, and the only access to provide the mechanicals such as the lights here, electrical, behind here, you've got the heating and air conditioning vents. The only way to get to this is to create a space between the ceiling, that's the flat part, and the top of the gable. Now, even though this is brand new construction, it may be that you have a room, possibly over a garage or somewhere in the attic, that you'd also like to convert to living space. You may want to consider a design like this, because it does allow you to get the best access of the space and still have ample access above.
As you can see, the type of ceilings that you can have in your home is only limited by your imagination and Of course, your budget, because I guarantee you a ceiling like this will cost a lot more than just a traditional flat ceiling. I mean, think about all the extra carpentry work that's involved, the extra drywall finishing, all the extra trim, and I guarantee you the painter's going to charge you a lot more to work on a high scaffold like this. But just think about the impact that it makes when you walk in the front door of this house, two-story foyer with this right on the very top. Pretty impressive. Now, so far we've looked at a number of options for ceilings on new construction, but also there's a lot of ways you can completely change the interior of your home while you're renovating an existing house. And we'll look at a project we just recently completed where we took just a regular flat ceiling and created a turtleback ceiling with all wood on the inside. Looks great. But first, let's check in with our buddy Joe Truini, who's also working on a ceiling project in this week's Simple Solution.
For most homeowners, working on ceiling is a lot less complicated than what Danny's been talking about. In this case, we're drilling a hole for a small plant hook we want to put in. Now, drilling a hole in a ceiling, a plaster or drywall ceiling, even a small diameter hole, creates a surprising amount of dust. Now, I suppose you could just drill the hole and come back and vacuum up the room, but I found an easier way that you can collect the dust right at the point of drilling. The first thing we're going to do is put on your safety glasses. Even though we're collecting almost all the dust, you don't want to get any in your eyes. Then take a paper or styrofoam cup and drill a hole right through the bottom of the cup. Now in this case, I had to trim the cup a little bit just so the bit would stick out. And now line up your bit on your mark, and then before drilling, press the cup tight against the ceiling. That's very important. And then drill the hole. And you'll see, take a look in there, you see, you catch quite a bit of dust just with this one hole. Now, before you move on, if you have other holes to drill, before you move on, just empty this out and go down and drill the next hole.
More homes have specialty ceilings now than ever before. And that's what we're looking at this week, showing you how you can really enhance a room by having a specialty ceiling, whether you're building a new home or, like these homeowners are doing, extensively renovating a special part of their house. Now, this used to be the kitchen, and over here was originally just a nice little family room that had a brick wall on one side, wood paneling on one wall, and a traditional 8-foot tall ceiling. Over here, the kitchen, painted wood cabinets, needed a little upgrading, and the homeowners decided to go ahead and remove the wall between the two areas and then incorporate one nice large turtleback ceiling. It's a real interesting way to kind of top off a renovation like this. Now, another thing they've decided to do is to change up their dining room a little bit. Now, traditionally, dining rooms like this are a little more formal, and you can see the work's already started on this ceiling, and what we're planning on doing here is what's called a tray ceiling or recessed ceiling. Sometimes it's called a bump-up ceiling. That's one of the things about these different ceilings. Everybody has their own terminology for it, but basically, it will be one that we've shown you a lot on the show where it recesses up about 12 inches, and then it's a flat spot. Now, that's a little more of a formal look than, say, a turtleback ceiling, and dining room, perfect place for that. But we're not finished. One more ceiling's being altered. This is the little foyer area that leads in. Actually, these doorways will go right into the den area that we just looked at, as well as this doorway. And so it's a perfect little arrangement as far as the floor plan of this house for it to have this nice little pattern or traffic pattern here. Probably pretty nice for entertaining too. And when they're entertaining, this place is going to feel a lot bigger because here again we have another tray ceiling going in here that will bump up about 12 to 14 inches and then flatten out. Now, of course, this is a lot easier to do this kind of work when you're building a brand new home, but it can be done in almost every house that you may have, but it depends on what's up above. As long as there isn't another floor level immediately above the joist, the options are pretty broad. But even if it's just attic space, there can be a few challenges. In many cases, the framing that supports the ceiling for a room may also provide some support for the roof structure above it. In these situations, it's important that this load be transferred somewhere else, at least temporarily, while the old ceiling is being demolished and the new one created. Of course, it's inevitable that there will be some electrical wires, maybe some heating and cooling ducts, and possibly some plumbing to contend with, but most of these can be relocated without a whole lot of difficulty. Now, once the space is clear, it's time to begin laying out the new ceiling, and this often requires a little experimentation. Here we got the owner involved in this process to be sure she would be happy with the height and shape of the finished ceiling. This also gives you a clear picture of how much space will be left above for any ductwork or mechanicals that have to go back into the smaller attic space. This turtleback ceiling will start with 2x6 joist resting on the inside wall and running up to the roof rafters in the middle of the room so we can get equal angles on both sides. This also replaces some of the roof support that was lost when the old ceiling came out. Finally, another 2x6 is nailed between the new joist and the rafter at carefully marked positions to create a flat spot across the top of the ceiling. Well, all of our framing is complete on all of our specialty ceilings in this house, and now it's time for an electrician. You know, an electrician has a pretty tough job on a project like this because he has to come out very early in the project and move all of the wires out of the way and still keep everything active so that the homeowners can live in one part of the house and we can continue working in the other part. So he'll be back out soon to rewire this entire area, which will include adding additional lights, any additional switches, and a great time to add any additional outlets or cable or phone, any of those wires. Now's the time before the walls and the ceilings go up. Now, another contractor we need to see fairly soon is our air conditioning and heating contractor that will reroute all of the ductwork back over the new ceilings that we've created. Now, along the way, one of the things that he'll do is to eliminate all of the original wall grills. You can see one of the holes here that'll have to be patched, and you can see where the grill is still in place on this wall. And basically what that is a metal housing behind it that's non-insulated. The air conditioning guys call it a boot. The problem with it not being insulated, you're kind of losing a little bit of the effectiveness of your heat and your cold air. When it hits that point, it kind of loses a little something. So we'll be replacing those in the new ceiling part with insulated boots and putting the ductwork here that should provide a lot more efficient operation of the heating and cooling and better circulation.
Another great way to improve the ventilation in your home is with a ceiling fan, especially if you have higher ceilings like the ones that we're looking at this week. Hey, did you know that ceiling fans actually help save energy and consequently money besides just circulating air? Yeah, it's because the air they move makes your room cooler during warm weather, so you don't have to crank that air conditioning up. And during the winter, you can reverse the fan circulation to help distribute the warm air that rises up near the ceiling. But this new line of fans from Hampton Bay does all of that even more efficiently because it uses Aero Breeze Blade technology, which increases the airflow by 40% over the standard ceiling fan. That means you can run the fan at a lower speed without sacrificing any comfort and still save energy. These models are also designed to be wobble-free and ultra-quiet, which means you might not even notice that they're there. But in case you do, they've combined all of this great technology with really stylish designs. So these fans will work with almost any decor.
Hey, we're continuing our look at specialty ceilings and how they can make a tremendous impact on any room in your house. Now, when you're remodeling like we are here, you're a little more limited on exactly how high you can raise a ceiling, whereas earlier when we looked at some of the new houses and some of the things they're doing with some of these houses, you can do almost anything. But here, we've still made a very large difference by raising the ceiling up in a turtleback fashion and removing the wall between what was a kitchen and a living room. Of course, we're doing something a little bit different here to make it a little nicer, and that's we're installing a wood ceiling. Now, the homeowners wanted to have a painted ceiling, so we used the 1x6 pine and we put a coat of primer on it. Once it's all installed, they'll do a little caulking and a little spackling here and there. Then they can put the last 2 coats on to finish up the look of it. Now, another option is to stain this wood. You can see it's pretty clear, no knots on it. Makes for a nice looking ceiling. You can stain it a light color, or you may choose for that rich wood color and darken it down a bit. Then you can put a coat of sealer on it, install it. One last coat of sealer and it'll last for a long, long time. But when you're installing this much wood, it takes a long time. The biggest reason is there are an awful lot of cuts that have to be made, and then each board has to be positioned perfectly so that all the joints line up neatly. This V-groove material we're using here is a very good grade of wood, but all dimensional lumber is prone to some warping and bowing, so each individual piece has its own unique personality. That means they often require a little persuasion to line up in the groove of the previous piece so that each new joint is just as tight as the one before. And all of this has to be done without scarring the surface of the wood. Then, of course, the end joints need to be staggered along the length of the room so that they don't all meet on the same joist, which would give the ceiling kind of a lopsided look. And as you might guess, cuts around light fixtures and ceiling vents are also a little more time consuming. All of these factors combined make installing a wood ceiling much more labor intensive than a simple drywall ceiling. Think about it this way. 2 men can hang a 4x12 sheet of drywall in just a few minutes, and they've installed 48 square foot of ceiling. While the same square footage of wood ceiling could take a pair of skilled carpenters as much as 2 hours to install. Of course, the drywall ceiling will also need some finish work and a couple coats of paint to be complete, but a wood ceiling requires a fair amount of prep work too, and whether you stain it or paint it, a good finish on wood takes time. Now, all this additional time adds up to money unless you're doing the work yourself, but the results can be spectacular. All of the time that we spent on the ceiling really paid off. It looks great, and the colors that the homeowners chose complement all the new cabinetry and floor and the island area just perfectly. You know, I realize not everybody has the time or skill to install a ceiling like this, but here's an option that's a lot more do-it-yourself friendly. Now, this type of ceiling, which simulates wood very closely, even with the texture and the finish on it, is a lot easier to install because it simply just glues or staples right to your existing ceiling. So you can change the look of a room very quickly with material like this. Now, the material itself costs about the same as our wood ceiling, but where you really save money is on saving on the amount of time it takes and on it being completely pre-finished and available in several different type of finishes. And I'll tell you, getting a ceiling like this primed and painted with 2 top coats costs a lot of money. Now, another system that's very similar to this as far as installation, but it's a completely different look and certainly one that can add a lot of character to a room, is a stamped metal ceiling. And I'm seeing these at all kinds of rooms, from game rooms to dens to dining rooms. Just about any kind of room can benefit and really change a lot by having a stamped metal ceiling. Hey, check out one of the questions that we recently got from one of our viewers.
Danny, what's so important about me having ventilation in my attic when it's not a living space?
Oh, I could go on and talk about that one for an hour, but let me give you 2 really big reasons. The first has to do with moisture. You know, in the winter, warm air from below meets the cold air in the attic and creates moisture. With no place to go, it'll eventually find its way back into your home in the form of mold or mildew. Now, the second reason, all about shingles. You know, during those hot summer months, even with decent ventilation, your attic becomes a steam bath. With little or no ventilation, it's an oven. The heat continues to build up, much like a pressure cooker, and it literally bakes your shingles from the underside. Now, the result is a shingle that becomes brittle or curls several years before they should. In other words, it will cut the life of your roof in half. So make sure you have enough ventilation at your soffit areas, ridge, and gables, and also consider adding a power roof ventilator to increase the ventilation in your attic. You probably don't spend a lot of time thinking about ceilings, but I hope now when you see a cool one, you'll remember it. But more than that, I hope we've given you some ideas and inspiration you can use in your own home, whether you're building a new one or improving the one you have. Besides the obvious aesthetic and even financial benefits that come with this kind of project, you also get an enormous sense of pride when you do something that makes your home uniquely your own. Boy, it was a lot of fun putting this project together, and putting this show together was a blast. Seeing all the different imaginative ceilings that are available and being created by people to change a very mundane space in their home to a very elegant space. That's what we did to this room. By just raising it up 12 inches and installing a 5-stage crown molding, it changed this room completely, gave it a lot more of a formal look, which is exactly what the homeowners wanted. Hey, I hope you enjoyed seeing some of the possibilities that are out there for ceilings in your home. I'm Danny Lipford. We'll see you next week.